I'm gonna change this vanity into this. For this project, I'm going to be traveling back home to see my folks in Mississippi. But before I do that, I need to do some prep and prepare this hickory board to take with me. All I'm doing is kind of squaring it up and making sure that it looks nice and is decently flat. Then I'm putting a decent chamfer all around the edges so that it has a little bit of detail from the front side. You'll see later in this project exactly what this board is for. Oh, and it's a good idea in between bit changes to tap the collet on your router and get all of that dust out of there. If you've not tried it, I think you'll be surprised how much you'll get out. I'm here at my parents' house, and years ago I helped my dad close in this 1950s style two-car carport into a full room and double vanity and all this. It's time for some updates for it. One of our goals with this is to not do any paint work and not do any drywall or plaster work. So we're trying to give it a facelift with some new hardware and sinks and lights and some different touches, putting a frame around the mirror and just give it an overall facelift. It took a little convincing to do because my dad really did not want to mess with this room. I understand after you finish something, you really don't want to revisit it, and he didn't see that there was anything that needed changing. But I'd say if he got 28 years out of these drawer pulls, handles, and faucets, then he got his money's worth. Like I said a minute ago, there was no reason to get rid of these doors and drawers. They were perfectly good. We're just going to swap out the hardware for something a little more updated, and then we can just reuse the same ones. We were very careful to take out and label where everything went. That way we could put it back without any adjustment. What exactly are we going to be doing to this vanity? We're going to swap out the hardware. We're going to swap out the hinges. We're going to put new faucets in there. And we're going to update this 90s style light as well as frame in the mirror. All of those things should really bring a totally different look to this bathroom. If it looks a little foggy, that's because it is. I just walked outside and remembering that I'm back in Mississippi because it's really humid. Getting all set up here at my parents' house. We're about to go down to the barn and grab this old barn wood that I don't even remember where I got it. Got it from a neighbor a while back or something. Anyway, we're gonna try to frame out the mirror with that stuff. So we're getting a little station set up to work on it. Let's go to the barn. I'm going to keep this video in basically the real time of when it happened. Because of that, it's going to be a little bit choppy because we had to move back and forth between demoing this old space and preparing the new things. We tackled some of the demo of the space the first day that we arrived, but there wasn't enough time to really do much with the wood. So here I am getting it out of the barn, starting to prepare it, ripping it down to size because the wood is actually going to have a little bit of a painted effect and some finish sprayed on it.
You and your camera.
All right, so it's working. Don't need a nail. Gotta move them. That one's good. We're going for a bit of a rustic look, so this was some very uneven, very old barn wood that we had from somewhere. I don't even remember where we got it. So I was taking my circular saw and cutting it down to rough dimensions. We'll end up doing the final a little bit later. This is some rough sawn oak, and it has the mill marks still on it. We wanted to keep that look for framing out the mirror, so there was really no dimensioning of this stuff that we could do, meaning a jointer or a planer. So, to get one straight line, we figured that the track saw was probably the easiest way. Looks real good. That's some nice white oak. All right, that one looks good. We were gonna cut this on the track saw, on the table saw, but it's gonna be just as easy to mark 4 inches and put the track saw back up here and rip. So that's what we're gonna do. Enter this beast of a grinder. This big circular grinder had some crazy grit on it, like 40 grit, and we were using it to flatten out some of these uneven parts of the backside. Like I mentioned, we couldn't really run these through a planer. My dad did not have a planer, and we did not want to take the patina off of the front of the wood. So I just used a straight edge and checked it as I went and just made sure these pieces were as flat as they could be on the backside. It's pretty glossy.
Any position squirt too.
I'm really trying to get it down in some of these grooves. And then what we'll do is sand off the top high spots and it'll leave a cool look.
You want your little top?
I did this treatment on a shelf that I built for their house. So if you haven't seen that video, click here and go watch that and it'll be a similar treatment. That's why we're doing this, so it'll match. And here's a slight change of plans. My dad ended up deciding he did not want to try to replace these hinges, so he scrubbed them down really well and found a oil rubbed bronze paint that matched the faucets that he bought, and he just sprayed a couple coats on those. I told you we were going to be skipping around a lot, so here we're back inside trying to get these old faucets out. We don't want to mess up these sinks or the countertop. All of that is going to remain in place. And turns out it's kind of tricky to get faucets out that have been there for 28 or 29 years. We had a real hard time getting that drain pipe out, and we ended up having to just cut it and pry it out. We also replaced these supply line valves while we were at it with better ones. All right, moment of truth. Now it's got the old faucet, or the old drain.
On and off and on and off, real fast.
And you guessed it, while they work on the sink some more, back outside. I'm just cutting everything down to the final length now of what it will need to be to frame the mirror. I can do all of this now that the white paint is dry, and I'm just taking some 120 grit sandpaper and sanding a little bit on the top just to remove some of the white paint, but it remains down in the grooves. We didn't want any kind of yellowing effect on this stuff because it already had an aged look and we just didn't need that. So I'm using General Finishes High Performance in satin. I sprayed on 2 or 3 coats of this using a brown paper bag in between just to scuff it up a little bit.
But I bartered. Nick needed some TPS stuff.
And while that dries, back inside again.
There we go.
I know some gold finishes have come back in style recently, but they're a different hue than this stuff from the 90s. This stuff was really high gloss and kind of looked plasticky. At the time, it was kind of in, but it was time for this stuff to go. Here I am just removing some of these towel holders so we can move forward with putting up the new lights and framing out the mirror. Alrighty. We have killed the power. FYI. I got the piece then. Just got to pull this through the center. Ouch. All right. Woo! Back outside for a little more restoration now. Since we reused the hinges, I wanted the tops of the screws to have the same paint on them. I did not want these glaringly bright brass screws to be showing inside our nice newly painted hinges. So I just screwed them into the top of a box. This is a trick I've seen and used quite a few times, and then hit them with a few coats of that same paint.
you've heard of a bigger hammer, this is a bigger wrench.
Think that'll fix it?
Well, it's gonna fix it one way or the other.
This sink was still having some leaking issues. We should have gotten some new plumber's putty. The stuff we had was kind of dried out, but we ended up making it work with some caulking. If you're not making a mess with a caulking gun, are you even doing it right?
If you're not making a mess, you don't have a caulking gun.
You got a blowout on your elbow there. If you haven't been around a construction site, you may have never seen one of these. This is a plumb bob, and we actually used it to find exact center of where our new faucets were. That way we could make sure to center our lighting right above it. Now that we have those measurements, a little bit of layout on our hickory board, and it will be outside to route out some grooves. For the wires, you know. For the look my mom was going for, we ended up finding 4 separate light fixtures, so I'm drilling 4 through holes for the wires to come through and routing out a groove and enough space for all of the wires and wire nuts. In case you're new to routers and you've never used a very dense wood like hickory, you don't want to do your full depth all in one plunge typically. So I started out doing a very shallow groove, and then I just increased until I got to the depth that I needed. In and out and in and out. Yeah, we get it, Bruce. You're back inside now. Okay. Hot glue is the name of the game for holding in the wires into the groove that I routed, and if you're not aware, turn a can of canned air upside down and spray it on the hot glue. It will cure almost immediately. Glob it and then come up about here and glob it. Because my dad is a hoarder like I am, we were able to find enough scrap wire that we didn't have to go purchase any. We had enough on hand to run all of these lights and connect them just like we wanted. Climb up, baby. I said your back pocket.
I can't get anything out of my back pocket.
I want your teeth.
Big booty problems.
Put them in your lips.
Put them in the donkey lip.
Or that in your knuckles. You can put one every.
Just hold all the wires and see if you light up when we turn it back on. Yeah, lick it.
The other pocket.
All of that prep work with the wires and the hot glue seemed excessive until we got to this point, and I was very thankful that we had prepared. Once we got that board up there and into the studs, it was very easy. At this point, there were just finishing details for the lighting, putting all of the actual lights up and secured to the board that we had up, put the globes on and put the bulbs in. And my goodness, I think we messed with this left-hand sink for about 3 days. All right, Mom, go in there and turn on the light.
Okay, oh, I like it already without the light on. Oh, it's amazing. Nice shades coming down, nice structure over the sink. Those really complement the sink. Wow. It's good. I think it's more than enough light, and I love the board. I love the board.
That hickory turned out cool, didn't it?
Yeah, really did. Wow.
It's finally time in the build to put to use all of that wood that we prepped for the mirror. As you're probably seeing, this mirror goes almost from wall to wall, and the reason that we didn't take it down is my dad secured it to the wall with some type of adhesive that would have ripped a big hole in the wall if we had pulled it off. So our option was to find some way to anchor it to the wall or use an adhesive that could stick straight to the mirror that was clearly not going anywhere. We chose option B, and it worked out just fine. This Gorilla Construction adhesive sets up in 30 seconds and has a fantastic hold. I'm thinking some blobs will be better to make sure that it makes contact. Moment of truth. Uncle. Oh yeah.
Circa 1972.
And since we were only using the adhesive to stick this to the mirror, I wanted to give this extra time to cure before we tried to put that top board on. So to not be idle, I moved over to putting some of the drawer pulls back and that type of thing. I got it. Done. Like that, right? Okay, hold on, don't touch it yet. All right, I'm good. You good?
I'm good.
Okay. Now I want to go left and right just a little. That's pretty seated. Let's go 3.5 up from the bottom. I had a few offcut pieces left over from the mirror, and I wanted to make some towel holders that fit with the aesthetic and just looked cool. I also had some leftover black hardware that was real close in color to that oil rub bronze that they were using for the new faucets and hardware, so I thought it would be okay. I pre-drilled a couple of different sizes of holes so that I could also countersink those screw heads down into the piece that would then sit behind the hanger hardware. It would never be seen. I got lucky that there was blocking behind here so that it could hold up this big piece of wood for the holder. It was probably because my dad built this room and he knew that that would be needed. This was some pretty dense white oak, and if you've ever tried putting some of these little decorative screws into white oak, they break very easily. So, in a pinch, you can use a candle. I would use probably the bottom of the candle like I did so you don't mess up your mom's candle, and just rub some of that wax on the screw so it goes in a little more easily. Some candle wax. At this point, the rest of the handles, hardware, and cabinet doors can get put back on and into place where they belong. And at the very last minute, we decided to also swap out the door handle that goes to the toilet room, where the shower and toilet are, and the closet. I don't know if this rustic style is a style that you like. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but I think it turned out pretty well. It goes with a lot of the rest of their house that has kind of a country theme, and I think it looks great in there. Well, here's the finished vanity with the makeover. I hope you enjoyed watching how we did it. I hope you got something out of it. If you learned something or you have hints about something I did wrong or maybe should have done better, leave them in the comments below. I'm always in the comments replying to different things. That's it for me, so I'm out of here.